the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Shuttle Atlantis. It's a pretty good size. Mostly fuel. Now, what's the scale of it? Definitely has a perspective. Hi, Rich Hoffman here. So to talk a little bit more about Artemis, my wife and I just came back from NASA, the Space Coast. Spent a little time there and was able to go see the facilities at their building for SpaceX and the very large and impressive campus for Blue Origin. And then, of course, I really wanted to see what was going on with Artemis. And while we were at the facility, they made the decision, because they have some leaks and some things they need to fix before they can launch again. So they made the decision to scrub the early March mission and push it into April and roll the Artemis 2 back into the vehicle assembly building to fix up some leaks and some mechanics that aren't quite there. So observations and my personal experience in aerospace, just some things to kind of constructive criticism, because I want NASA to work. I want a space economy. I want expansion of human intellect into off planet Earth for a lot of risk mitigation needs and just the adventure of exploration and acquisition of human knowledge. So I want to see NASA work, but the problem with NASA is that they're living in the past. When you tour the facility, even on the VIP side of things, you get a lot of reverence for history, what they've done, but not much about what they are doing lately. And you get especially when you compare them next to SpaceX and Blue Origin and other emerging aerospace companies that are definitely getting a foothold. Northrop Grumman definitely is doing a lot of things. Lockheed Martin, obviously, all these great aerospace companies have a footprint into that realm, and it's good to see. But NASA is kind of stuck, and again, they're rooted in the past. They love to revere when they were the best because they're the only ones on the block doing anything, and they've lost that edge, and that was quite obvious with this Artemis. And they're addressing it when they announced that they were going to not take Artemis 3 and land on the moon, that they were going to sprinkle another mission in there and make the lander Artemis 4. That's not good. It's probably too big of a step if you have, like they say, have gained some atrophy, where it's too much time between launches. The people who are involved in those launches come and go in their careers. You have high turnover in the people who are involved in the program. But it even goes further than that. These days, especially in these fields, the most polite way to say it is that a lot of them have gone woke, and they don't put their best and brightest on the front lines to go solve problems. They put, they fell into all the DEI hires and expected it to all work out right. They went the same way that Hollywood's gone and all these other facets of society that thought they took for granted what employment was and what employees wanted out of their employee experience. And they've turned jobs into unsatisfactory elements to acquire enough money to pay your rent, but not to actually achieve things in life. So when you go through the Astronaut Hall of Fame and you see all the resumes of what everybody who first braved that frontier, what they did to get there, there's impressive test pilot credentials that really is a lot to be proud of. It's the whole right stuff mentality. And we just don't make the right stuff anymore. We don't make the right stuff in our schools. We certainly haven't been promoting them. The Trump administration is certainly trying to resurrect that. I think NASA, as it exists today, is trying to resurrect that, and even pushing on the heat shield issue on the Artemis 2, which is fairly risky. Not risky enough to scrub the mission, but when you look at how much time it's going to take to replace their heat shield approach, changing the approach vector is probably more practical than actually changing the materials and the design, because it could take a decade to do that, and that's just not good. So my comments on the whole Artemis program, I'm very excited for it. I want it to work. I want NASA to be very successful. But the constructive criticism is this. My family's been a part of Space Coast for over 30 years. So we have a family condo there, complex that we've gone to many years. And it's been a big part of our life. And we've been to the Cape Canaveral area many dozens of times. Lots and lots of times. But the thing is, out of all those visits, I've never seen a launch. I've never been there when there was a launch. And for the last 10 years or so, I haven't gone there much. I was very mad when the Obama administration redesignated NASA to research Islamic contributions to science, and then canceled the space shuttle program. And we started hauling people up on Russian rockets. That wasn't, to me, satisfactory at all. I'm not good with that. So I sort of did other things in my life, and we didn't end up going to the Space Coast much. Now, my kids have been at the condo when there's been launches. There's a few here and there, and I've had some of our family members have seen quite a few launches over the years, but all the times I've been to this particular condominium complex at near the Kennedy Space Center, my wife and I had never seen a launch. So we were excited. We were going down for a whole bunch of reasons, mainly to go check out the Artemis program and see SpaceX and Blue Origin and what's going on, kind of get some sneak peek behind the scenes at some things, because I'm very interested in that kind of part of the market economy and how it's emerging, and kind of get a feel, the vibe between all those different organizations. And it was very impressive. But I was very excited to know that SpaceX was planning on putting up, they had like 3 launches in that period we were going to be down there towards the end of February 2026. And there was a Wednesday launch, and we were flying down on a Friday, and there was a Friday launch, but they did it early in the morning while we were in transit, because the weather's pretty stable early in the morning. So I was kind of down that I was going to miss 2 launches that were happening while we were going to be at the condo. But then there was a 3rd launch, and it was going to be a launch on a Saturday night, the same day we were going to go over and see Artemis and all that. And it was going to be at 9 o'clock-ish that night. So I had hoped that it might last. Now, this is SpaceX putting up satellites, building infrastructure, which is quite important and good. And so they were routinely now with the Falcon putting up launches as predictably as you see buses coming and going. They don't have crashes. They don't, there's occasional ones, but not as much as there was in the beginning. They've certainly taken away a lot of the opportunities for error. and made space flight very robust and dependable. And people don't even hardly pay attention to the space launches anymore, which I think is good, because they take it for granted that they just go up and they're almost eventless. But I hadn't seen one yet. So we did our bits at the Kennedy Space Center, and went to go look at all the things we wanted to look at, needed to look at, and had on the schedule. And by the time they were getting ready to do the launch, we were able to get out the balcony of the condo, and I was able to set up a camera to catch it if it went off, and it actually went off, and it was quite exciting to see. And in fact, this is a clip of what it looked like. 30 seconds, so it's clocking. 30 seconds, 25 seconds.
Oh, it's lighting. Here it goes. There it goes. It's firing. It is over there.
Got it. Here it goes. It's gonna go chop it over.
See where the brightest part is? Yeah. There it goes.
I think it's gonna hit the same path that it hit the other night.
It's like this.
Yeah.
Here, here.
Oh, there are people on the beach. We just didn't see them.
Oh yeah, look, it's lighting up now.
Woo!
It's in the sky.
Oh, goodness. That's about where it was when we came out.
Oh, you can hear it. Listen.
Now you can hear it. That's when we came running out.
So that was quite something to see. I think we're going to see it much more routine in the future. And again, it took SpaceX to really kind of get a dependable schedule before I was able to even see one. If I was waiting on NASA, it's almost like a lottery ticket. You know, every now and then you just so happen to be there. If you're a snowbird and you spend 6 months at a time in Florida in retirement mode, you might get to see these launches from NASA, but they don't launch very often. And that's ultimately the problem with the Artemis program. They don't launch enough. The launches they do have are too expensive. They don't have high employee engagement the way SpaceX has been able to recruit. They have much more engaged employees at SpaceX than they do at NASA. NASA, they've recruited over the years, again, too many hires that just want a job, and they don't have a lot of passion for space. And they probably should take more of a tour of the visitor center and get a feeling for the adventure instead of just showing up for work and going through the motions. What NASA needs, which was evident to me while visiting there, that NASA needs a much more robust second shift and a third shift and 7 days a week. I say that a lot in every part of my life. I think we need more engaged employees. I don't think we have a robust workforce as we have in the past, where people didn't do work just for the paycheck. They did work to actually perform something meaningful in life. And in the space program, you certainly expect that. People who are getting paid to raise their families, do what they have to do to make a living. But beyond that, you have a desire to actually achieve things that matter in the world. Achievements, human technical achievements. And every time you put a rocket up, you should advance something along those assumptions. And when you're only doing a rocket launch every couple years, 3 years between rocket launches, which NASA addressed in their cancellation, but additional mission criteria for the moon landing not happening until the Artemis 4. Very disappointing, considering we have been to the moon, we have stuff on the moon. I think Firefly is getting ready to land on the moon again, to send another mission to the moon. Everybody's doing all these big things, and NASA is just sort of taking a back seat, and that's a shame because they should be leading. SpaceX, as a commercial company, commercial company, I should say, is really kind of dominating. Their rate of work is very impressive. Again, we were there on a Saturday. They had just landed a Falcon rocket that came down on the barge, and they brought it in. We were down at the restaurants down by where all the Port Canaveral, where all the cruise ships leave, and they brought in a Falcon rocket that had just landed out in the ocean. They brought it in, put it on a little truck, took it down to the SpaceX facility, and while we were there, they were cleaning it up. It was on a flatbed, and they were getting ready to turn it back up on its end, refill it, use it again, and that's the kind of frequency. And again, that period of time, they had 3 launches. They had a launch Wednesday, they had a launch Friday, and then again a Saturday night launch. So 3 launches in a cadence of just a very short window. NASA should be doing that. NASA should have been doing that all along, and political priorities didn't support it, and that's why you're seeing kind of what you're seeing. If it wasn't for the commercial guys really pressing it, NASA probably would still be studying Islamic contributions to science as Obama dictated, and Trump created Space Force to do all this kind of stuff and really kind of dominate space with another branch of government. That was important and significant, and but you need to be doing a lot in space often. And right now we have a lot of satellite coverage, then there's a lot of hardware going into space that's going to magnify many times over in the very coming years. But to be at that condominium complex that I've been to so much and kind of watched the merge over time. I've watched the property values along the Space Coast with anticipation what the shuttle program was going to contribute to that economy there along Port Canaveral down to Cocoa Beach. It's stabilized pretty good, but as far as it growing into some moment of awesomeness, it's kind of staggered out a lot over the last 10 years, largely due to Obama-era policies that did not embrace the adventure of space. And it shows in the local economy. So I see kind of a stabilization that's coming back because SpaceX is actually doing something. When you go to the visitor center, you see Blue Origin's building. My wife doesn't really care much for Blue Origin. She doesn't like Jeffrey Bezos, but it doesn't, regardless of that, the facility is tremendous. If you've ever been to the GE facility in Evendale, Ohio, the Blue Origin complex could have eaten that complex at least once. They have a giant, and they're building more, and it's just outside the visitor center. Used to be a big empty field, and now it's got this gigantic Blue Origin factory in it, and has a lunar module facility indicator on one of the buildings. It's very obvious, very big, done to scale for a new space economy. And they're not even the big ones there. SpaceX is much bigger, doing much more at Kennedy Space Center than anybody is. But the SpaceX stuff is behind the gate. You have to kind of get behind security to get to it, where Blue Origin is outside that gate. But they're still using the facilities down there in large ways, and really you're looking at launches that need to be going up every day. And NASA doesn't really have a schedule that facilitates that. They're not the leaders here. They're just sort of the go-between because they have the Space Center, and it's a good place to go launch rockets. But the ability to actually lead this thing, NASA's way behind, and Artemis isn't doing anything to change that. And they need to get much more aggressive, which they indicated they were. But the disappointment is Artemis 3 is not going to put a lander on the moon anymore because they don't even trust their systems enough to support life. And they're so worried about catastrophic failure that they have paralysis of action. So they have NASA is certainly suffering from analysis paralysis. When you go to the Atlantis exhibit at the Space Center, and it's just a reminder of how bold we were in the 80s and 90s. And then you go and you look at the how sad it was to see the Challenger and Columbia memorial that's there at the Atlantis facility, and it's really heartbreaking to see the people who died along the way. But that's also part of the cost of adventure, and there are lots of adventurers who are happy to suffer it all for the thrill of adventuring. And it's not for everybody, but you also have to have a culture that accepts that level of risk. And NASA is no longer that right stuff culture where occasionally you put the test panels pilot on the wall ponchos to say, hey, you gave it all, you crashed, you died. We'll put a picture up to remember you, and we'll sip a beer in your honor. And then we're going to move on to the next pushing of the boundaries. And that's the attitude you have to have. And then it comes down to all the engineers and all the workers. Instead of going home at 5 o'clock, you stay 2 or 3 extra hours. If it means that crawler's not going to get back until 9 o'clock at night, you don't just park it on the runway or on the road and go home. You stay until the job's done. You stay up all night. You work all the extra hours. You work extra on Saturday. And what my point was, watching that Falcon come in, right down on where all the restaurants are, just comes right on in. They put it on a truck and they drive it on in the Space Center. There was a robust crew at SpaceX working Saturday. I mean, they had a lot of people working as if it was a work day. And you saw a lot of engagement in the second and third shifts where, you didn't notice it was a weekend because they had highly engaged people who were there to fulfill the mission parameters, and that was get the next rocket ready to run. At NASA, that's not what they're doing. They're waiting too long. They're thinking too much about things. They're not doing enough experimentation. They're getting lost in the PR bits of it, letting the media kind of control the narrative rather than them controlling how their frequency then drives the story. They're letting the fear of what the media might do if there's a catastrophe to their public relations guide them on all their decision making, and it's crippled the program. And that's why the Artemis rocket's not going up. That's why they didn't figure out they had a leak until they went through a dry run on Friday night while we were there. And we were all excited about, hey, this is going to happen like one week from now. We're going to see a manned mission at least loop around the moon the way they did in Apollo 13. It's about time to return to that. But that's not what we ended up with. They ended up scrubbing it because they had some leaks, and they should have detected that before they even rolled it out there. It should have been well known by all the engineers. But that's what you get when you get a bunch of 9-to-5ers who are running your program, and you have a PR approach to the program where you're terrified of what the media might say if you have an accident, rather than controlling the narrative with bravery and human exceptionalism. That wants to drive for the adventure of exploration the way it should be. It's not what we have. So it's a shame that I've been to that condo complex that much and never seen a launch until just at the end of February 2026. I'm happy to have seen it. It was quite exciting to watch and see, and there's going to be a lot more frequency of them. But that shouldn't have been the case. Over a 30-year period of going to that particular condo, that shouldn't have been my first launch. And that's just how bad it is with NASA. That should be a daily occurrence, at least a couple times a day at this point. And the wokeisms coming out of the government and the lack of support that's come out of Congress, with the lack of foresight in looking at what the space economy will do for the United States as an economy. To be able to, I think you're going to be able to double your GDP in a very short time with the space economy. Again, money's not everything, but what comes from it, and human bandwidth is extraordinary, and definitely will raise the level of living for everybody who enjoys that economy, and it really benefits the world in so many ways. To not have enough foresight to understand how Congress could support NASA, not just with money, but with attitude. That old right stuff attitude. There's a gift shop at the Saturn V building called The Right Stuff, and I've gone to it for years. And it reflects back on the movie The Right Stuff, which was one of my favorite movies from the 80s. And it was a great look into how the Mercury program came about, how Chuck Yeager's breaking the sound barrier, the attitude it took to kind of get through all those technical hurdles. And yeah, there's all the Jack Parsons occult stuff and the NASA desire to reunite with Mars, and where civilization started out in space, and touch origin stories with mythology. I get all that, and that's all part of the story, but really it comes down to bravery and human adventure. And The Right Stuff was always a great way to kind of explore what that was and why it was, and how we need to continue that going forward. And we're a long way from that. We've allowed ourselves to be reduced to a culture of overanalyzed bureaucrats that take too long to do things. And that's why the Artemis program has yet to launch. It has to push it out again. They're nervous about anything they do because they don't have enough engagement from their engineering group. The workers just treat it like a job, not as an adventure and a contribution to the furtherance of mankind. And there's not enough political support. You might get it out of the White House, but the Congress certainly hasn't embraced it over the years. And they've been too slow to respond, and the rate of resolution has just been too sluggish. So NASA should have targets of monthly launches, if not weekly launches, of some kind or another, in order to keep their crew, everybody at the complex working hard, working in an engaged fashion, and not just putting in 40-hour weeks or 32-hour weeks, or working COVID protocols where people run around with masks and working 6 feet apart, which was always stupid. You're not going to have conquest and adventure if you have that approach. And SpaceX certainly has the right approach, the right stuff. Blue Origin is certainly leaning forward in magnificent ways, and we're going to see great things coming out of those companies and many others that are all up and down the corridor from the space complex all the way up to Cocoa Beach. I love going down there for the vibrancy of the aerospace industry. I love seeing people thriving in economies and having upward mobility. I love going to the Cape Canaveral Publix and seeing everybody shopping and getting food, and go on a good vacation or come down and see launches or go to the Kennedy Space Center and kind of learn about aerospace. I really enjoy all of that, and I want to see a lot more of it in the future. And to that point, Artemis needs to get off the ground. They need to get more engagement. They need to go faster at everything they do. Congressional support, local politics, everybody needs to rally behind this. Can't just be President Trump getting behind it. It needs to be everybody. And they need to understand the importance of the space program there in Central Florida on the Space Coast and the opportunities it brings to the United States and the world in general. And Artemis is a big part of that. And even the press conference they had where they said, we're going to do better. We're going to go fix these leaks and get back out there and do an April launch. And we're going to do a couple more launches in 2027. And we're going to land on the moon in 2028. That's all too long. Got to go faster. And you got to get more engagement out of your people. You got to change the culture of adventure. And you got to stop just having the name of the right stuff at the Saturn V gift shop. You need to have that day in, day out in every way possible. You have to have the right attitude to have the right stuff, and that right stuff then needs to get payloaded into space frequently, week by week, maybe even day by day. And you need to do it much sooner than later, for sure. Anyway, Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. It was great to see a space launch from the Florida condo, but I want to see a whole lot more. There needs to be a whole lot more of that. It shouldn't be an exception or a rarity. It needs to be a common occurrence. You need to be able to go get a pizza and watch space launches every day. And that's the expectation. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.
Thank you for listening.